good. All right, I'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city of Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act and conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall of this meeting room facility as required. Disclosure of meeting recording processes is also posted in the meeting room. A participant sign-in sheet is available for use by any citizen addressing the council. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and are asked to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Kaler.
Here.
Singleton.
Here.
Streisand.
Here.
Tanyas.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Wilkin.
Here.
We have a quorum present.
All right, thank you. We have the first 6 items this evening make up the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin, Kaler, Tanyas, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 6-0.
All right, first item is approval of Seward 4th of July committee requests for annual festivities. Derek, do you want to start us off?
Yes, sir. So this is our typical thing that we have every year, right before the 4th of July. We have a street closure permit for the parade route, as well as a resolution for the parade. For the new council members, the reason why we do a parade resolution is so that we can show the state that we approved it as a governing body. Since the parade route crosses over a state highway, we have to get the state's approval. It won't be a big deal because we've been doing it for so long, but they want that formalized resolution from the city council saying, yeah, you know, we approve it, we're planning on going over here with your approval. So it just makes it a little bit cleaner. So if this is approved, I will send it on to the state. It'll take them a few days to review it, and they'll say, yep, you're good to go, you can have your parade, and that's about it. We do it every year.
And specifically with item A, normally the mayor can authorize the closure of streets. We started putting this as an agenda item, gosh, probably 10 years ago maybe. It was because we had some concerned citizens regarding the placement of certain, like the carnival, for example, and that would require the closing of a street. And so this just is so that the council is made aware and has notice of what the plan is, but also so the citizens are aware of what the plan is, especially as the 4th of July continues to kind of grow out of the downtown area. You start to infiltrate some of the neighborhoods, and we had one issue one year with, I think one of the attractions started setting up like the day, like sooner than expected, and it was in front of a business that still had customers coming in, and it kind of created an issue of you know, we don't want to, you know, it's a big day for us, but we also don't want to inconvenience the businesses or the customers from trying to access businesses as we approach the 4th of July. So, and again, it's also good to have a comprehensive map for the purpose of first responders, so that everyone knows which streets are going to be accessible and when they wouldn't be accessible. So that's the reason for the item A. And as Derek mentioned, the state started requiring this not too long ago, but I think they just want a piece of paper for their file. So, any questions or comments on those 2 items?
Move to approve A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of 1A. Is there any further discussion? Anything? Okay. Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin, Kaler, Tanyas, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 6-0.
And item B is a resolution. If someone would like, unless there are any questions or comments, otherwise we entertain a resolution.
Introduce a resolution?
Yes.
I'll introduce what resolution.
Okay, the resolution has been introduced and is designated as resolution number 2023-5. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkie, Taylor, Tanya's, Singleton, Strice, and Morgan, 6-0.
Item 2, requested items from Bottle Rocket Brewing LLC. Greg, do you wanna take this?
Yes, we have an addition to the licensed area, and I know Gerald's here as well. Essentially what we're doing is we're expanding the area on the property inside of the fenced area. Right now, if you're familiar with the Bottle Rocket property, they have a fenced area on the right side if you're looking at the front of the building. That's just a fence, it doesn't specifically block out anything. And then they have a fully fenced included in their previous liquor license area with that basically emergency gate. What they're gonna do is converge the entire area into one area, and then there'll be a gap, I believe, in the front. And this will allow for an expanded seating area, still an aisle for ADA access and purposes to get in the front. It will also expand the ability of people who are waiting in line, not all the way to the line, but who are waiting in line and know they've made their order maybe, to be able to be closer to the front, and then they can put their drinks down, grab their food, come back in. One of the biggest issues we were trying to tackle and working with Bottle Rocket on this was, how do we make that, when we do have the food trucks, more accessible? Right now, it's really hard. You basically can't do anything out there. You can't take your drink out there, you can't, because you can't even get out of the emergency exit area. You have to go all the way through the building, and so it's just not terribly functional. So with the different ways that they oversee these and talking to the Liquor Control Commission, Bottle Rocket felt like this was the best way that they could accommodate some of that. And so we don't have any specific issues. Again, we kept out the right of way. We just could not find a sufficient way through the Liquor Control Commission, and the mayor and myself worked with them as well, just to see if there's anything we could do that you could stay in line all the way as long as it was contained and marked, but it's just unable to under the current setup. But we think this will still be an advantage to them, and we didn't have any specific issue with it.
It gets them as close as they could get to what they were hoping to do. So it's a good compromise. So that's A, and then you wanna talk about B real quick?
B is the bike ride across Nebraska. We hosted this a few years ago, I think 2018. And this is a group of bicyclists. They'll be journeying across Nebraska. We'll be stopping in Seward once again. We'll have different festivities and things on the day, but we will have a street dance again this year in the exact same location we had it previously, on 5th Street in front of Cattle Bank, Jimmy John's, kind of that area. And so Bottle Rocket will be providing alcohol for this event, so the SDL. Due to we don't have to specifically approve the SDL because we've actually done it on this location before, so technically it could go through the short-term process. The reason it comes to you is because we're selling on city property alcohol, so that always has to be approved every time we do it, because you have to give your permission to sell alcohol on city property. Otherwise, if it was just under a normal, anywhere else, we'd probably do this under the short process, but you have to give your approval to allow this, so.
Should be able to do A and B together on that.
I would
They're
do-
two separate
yeah,
things.
I would separate them out.
But that's the status of those two requests from Ball Rocket.
Question,
Yeah,
when they come through, don't they pitch tents and so forth in an area?
I think
Is
this
that how
year,
they do it?
are they up by the school?
Up by the high school.
Like
Yep.
near the
We've
football
also
field?
gotten permission for the green space to the west of Ridgewood.
Okay. The year I think before we were down in the fairgrounds,
Yeah,
so this
And
this
before
time.
that was courthouse.
Oh, they did the courthouse?
Before that. Yeah,
When was
like-
that?
That's been a while.
I don't remember. I was not here for that one, but I was here for the fairgrounds, so. And they bring in, I think they have a mobile shower truck and a bunch of other apparatus that kind of follows them in and then is utilized by them, but the location this year will be up by the high school.
okay, thank you.
yeah. Any other questions or comments on item A or B?
Move through A.
Alright, we motion to approve A, is there a second?
Second.
We motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Taylor, Tanya, Singleton, Strice, and Morgan, 6-0.
Any further discussion on B, or I'd entertain a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve and a second. We have a motion and a second. Morgan. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Taylor, Tanya, Singleton, Strice, and Morgan, 6-0.
Alright, item 3, consideration of a resolution to adjust the building permit fees, specifically fee to install a temporary water meter. Brandon, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. The purpose for this resolution is to, for a temporary water meter. What's happened in the past is contractors are using unmetered water for drywall, soaking around foundations, landscaping, and whatnot. This was something Tim had started the seed on, I'm just finishing. What we're gonna do, the water meter will be temporary in use. After construction is completed and occupancy is about ready to start, the city will put in the permanent water meter. The fee was determined by the cost of the meter, water, wastewater staff, plus benefits. That's pretty much the gist of it at this point.
Is this pretty common practice?
Yeah, this is, I was in researching around and with Tim, we figured out that, yeah, we're kind of lagging behind in this area.
Okay. John, did you have something?
If we do a comparability study, the cities our size, how many of them are doing it?
Crete's doing it, Fairbury is doing it, Wilbur does it. I mean, I know those are smaller size, but then around the area, we're the few that don't. So,
And then the other thing would be, is it gonna justify the time and labor to hook it up, or is there gonna be that much water usage or not?
there's been quite a bit of water being used on something, especially if you have the contractor doing the full landscaping.
I know you were talking drywall and that before, during that landscaping comes after the fact.
All the soaking.
The soaking of the foundations and whatnot too, there's a lot of these are homes that are being built from, they're doing the landscaping involved as well, so.
Well, it's justifiable with the time and the labor to hook it up.
And my guess is that if they're paying for it, it might curb some of the over usage
Correct.
as opposed to just letting it, run the whole time, whatever. Okay, any other questions or comments from the council?
How does it work now? Sorry.
Right now, they're
No,
just
using it.
just using
Free
water.
water.
Yep,
Got it.
free water.
Thank you.
We frown on that.
I know, the bad thing is our water is expensive enough as it is, and a home is hot, more
Right.
expensive
And
than.
it's not fair to the folks that are already paying for the meter waters.
Yeah, I know, it's just, I agree.
So,
Any other questions or comments, or entertain a motion, or introduce the resolution?
I'd introduce the resolution.
Alright, the resolution has been introduced and is designated as resolution number 2023-6. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
I so moved. Second.
Motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Taylor, Tanya, Singleton, Strice, and Morgan, 6-0.
Alright, item 4, consideration of change orders for the East Seward Street Improvements Project. Mike, welcome.
Thank you. So we have two change orders that we have in front of you today. The first two items, miscellaneous items. The first one, storm sewer collar, was left off the project and it is required, so it's a minor item that we're adding. Basically, this concrete pipe is a bell and spigot. The bell is cast in, and sometimes when you're building storm sewer, you have two plane ends that meet up, because you're tying into existing piping or whatever. And so collars are required, but we didn't have any pay item in the project, so that's what's being added. Item 2 is the sanitary sewer. This was a 20-foot stub left on the far east end on East Seward Street, the existing sanitary sewer. We're changing the direction, the alignment, as it goes farther east to put it back in the center of the road. The stub was too long and too much in the wrong direction that we couldn't have it as is and then build on 20 foot by 20 foot. You get a slight readjustment, about 1 degree per every 20-foot length. We couldn't make it up fast enough, so they had to pull this 20-foot stub out, readjust it, recast it into the manhole, things like that. So that's item 2. Items 3 through 9 now are an addition, an extension of the water main. This is a 10-inch water main extension that'll be necessary in the future, probably phase 4 or 5 of Prairie View development. We are taking advantage of very good pricing that we're getting from our low bidder right now. We're able to extend that back to the east, underneath what'll be Prairie Flower, right, the north-south portion of East Seward Street. And we're getting a price now of $76 a foot before the pavement is on. Our low bidder was bidding 8-inch for this project, $53. The other bidders were $100 to $110 per foot. This is the larger size of 10-inch, the next size up, and $76. It's still economical. We would probably be paying $150 a foot to do this in the future. Plus, we'd have to either bore underneath. Boring costs are 4 times what they are to lay into a trench. And of course, if we cut existing pavement to do it later on, we'd have those costs too. I anticipate this change order would probably save the neighborhood of $20,000 to $40,000 if we were to defer this work to the future. So that's change order 1. I'll describe change order 2 as well. This also is a water main extension. This is a planned project. It was planned for the future fiscal year. This is also Prairie View. It's extending the water main, the existing 10-inch water main at Evergreen and Highway 34, right on the east side of that, so we won't be disturbing Evergreen itself with this, and extending it up into the Prairie View neighborhood. And so this will provide a larger water main that loops, increases fire flow and general flow for usage throughout that development, plus developments to the east as far as Bansky Highway. So this is a plan for the future. Again, we have a good price. The price here per foot, $86.55, a little bit more than 76. They have to build it on an incline, going through the ditch and then actually through the 2 detention basins on their way to finish that project up. So we would probably pay, again, on the order of $150 a foot. Doing this project now would probably save at least $90,000, maybe $100,000, $110,000. And we have planned this. We probably need this based on how well Prairie View's going now. We've already got 2 house permits in. We normally get 35 house permits per year, and there's 35 total in phase 1. So we're looking at phase 2 relatively soon. We can install this right now before grass grows, before houses are installed, kind of get it done before anybody's actually burdened by this project in their backyards. We do not need additional budget for this. We had in our current water CIP, $230,000 budget for this fiscal year to rebuild some 14-inch water main down near Tenneco that has been having some main breaks, and we still need to do that project. Because of Tim's passing, the design of that project kind of got lost in the shuffle. We still plan to have that design complete this fiscal year, but then we would swap these projects and do it in the following fiscal year. So as we do budgeting for fiscal year 2024, you'll see that same project come up again. So we're actually asking for these projects to kind of be flip-flopped in this change order. So a good deal that we have, and so contractor is able to, with their supplier, lock in that price. They're already mobilized, and so they can deliver this good unit cost for these 2 particular water main extensions.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, Rich?
You know, I really appreciate you taking the time to explain to us the difference in cost and pricing. And I know people pay attention to Derek's minutes, and they look real closely for opportunities for us to save money. So I appreciate the work.
Sure. Yes.
On number 2,
Yes.
Mike, that goes all the way from Evergreen up to Prairie Flower, that 1,400?
It does not go that far. So there is a low spot right now on Willow that's past the paved portions, past the closed 3 diamond triangles. Goes down to a low spot, and then it comes back uphill and goes uphill all the way to Prairie Flower. In that low spot is where this will end, between the upper pond and the middle pond. So we have an existing pond that they've extended that's right next to the Valley View neighborhood. And so it's between the two ponds just above that. So it doesn't, it doesn't really go, 1,500 feet, 1,400 feet, it doesn't go that far, for this cost, but that's in reality what we're paying, for water main at this point in time.
So the size of the water main on East Seward, that's part of that project and stuff, that goes all the way to Prairie Flower?
I'm sorry, again.
The water main that's, part of the.
That you're looping.
Yeah, that you're
We
looping
will
into.
eventually loop, so we're leaving a gap, so we're coming back across, to the west side of Prairie Flower, right with the first change order. Second change order is taking it as far as that low spot, and now we have a probably 2,500 foot gap that we'll have to fill over time. The contractor, incidentally, this project here will end at the point where the contractor's responsibilities start. They pay for the equivalent of 8-inch to connect those 2 points, and the city by ordinance pays for anything in addition in size increase above 8-inch. And so we'll just pay the differential between 10-inch and 8-inch. But then as those develop, those costs will be borne by the developer, then of course all the houses that are built in those future phases.
Now, are they going through the diversion ponds is where they're gonna dig it?
They're kind of going around the middle pond, and then it's gonna take
To
a
the
90-degree turn before it reaches
To
the
the
second
north
pond.
bank or south?
It's south,
The
so it's
south
under,
towards the state,
essentially under the high wires, right where they are
Okay.
now, so transmission maintenance.
So there won't be a lot of, so we're not messing with the diversion pond, not hardly at all.
We're not, but again, we'll skirt through
Yeah.
closely, right? And so there's a buried pipe, 36-inch storm sewer pipe connecting those 2 ponds. This is 10 feet away. The state requires us to be a minimum of 10 feet.
Okay.
And so these are just at 10 feet. We have a narrow 30-foot slot that we're putting buried electric, the storm sewer, and this water main.
So it's almost on the right of way, it's gonna be real close.
It's,
State.
yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Well, again, though, we are moving it out of the right of way at the state's behest. So no longer can we put any of these utilities points east in the state's right of way.
Okay.
They say we have plenty of opportunity to purchase right of way, and they're forcing us now to move it out. So this project essentially crosses that boundary, puts it back in, so the former outlot, the pond that was sold to Bob Benich for Prairie View, it's gonna cross in the middle of that bigger pond and then ride into that, what we have as an outlot negotiated
Right.
with Aspen Homes.
Any other questions or comments from the council? I was entertaining a motion on 4A, change order number 1.
I'll move
Motion
acceptance.
to
Second.
approve and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Taylor, Tanya, Singleton, Strice, and Morgan, 6-0.
And item 4B, change order number 2.
Move for,
Second.
A motion to approve and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Taylor, Tanya, Singleton, Strice, and Morgan, 6-0.
Thanks, Mike. Don't go anywhere. Number 5, consideration of an amendment to the professional services agreement with SEH Incorporated for the wastewater treatment facility improvements project in the amount of $278,786. Mike, welcome back.
Thank you so much. So we have again with us Colin Markson, who's the project manager from SEH, flew in. We have a meeting tomorrow, but he flew in for tonight's meeting to make the initial presentation. So I'll let Colin take over.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I was here about a month ago to update you on the status of the design project for the wastewater treatment facility improvements. At that point in time, we were at about 60% design. We're now pretty close to 90% design. We're actually going through a quality control review right now on the plans and specifications. Just so you know, 90% set of plans is what we kind of think of when we think of a set of plans that's deemed ready to submit to the state for review and approval, to kind of get the wheels moving on the project as far as construction goes. We do plan to kind of take a pause on this project until we know more about funding, but, as I said, at this point, we're close to 90%, and that's kind of where we'll stay for a while. I bring to you tonight, as Mayor said, an amendment to our professional services agreement in the amount of $278,786. That is for, changes, to our engineering, the amount of engineering it took to do some of the work related to the design effort. So this, original, engineering agreement included both a facility plan phase and a design phase. So facility plan is really just a report that kind of lays out the alternatives, that we would have for, building a plant that would meet the effluent limits that you'll have. Since we included that report phase as part of the total contract report phase and design phase, we did that report first and then found that some of the original recommendations in the facility plan that was developed by another firm, some of those recommendations ended up changing after we did a comprehensive review as part of the facility plan. So that led to some kind of changes in our design, which obviously took some more time and less time. So I should state also that there are things that were excluded from our design, and those, some show a negative and some show, still show positive, but the math is happening behind the scenes in the table that was provided. Those changes were all laid out in a additional services log, which I attached to the letter that was sent. There's a detailed explanation along with a estimated dollar amount. So every time we had a change in scope when we went through this project, I went back to my design team and I said, how long is this going to take you to make this change in your design? They gave me the number of hours, I calculated the dollar amount, put that in the additional services log, and brought that number to the city, sent an email to the city saying, hey, we've got this change in scope, this is how much we think it's going to take. Kept track of those as we went through the project, and now since we're at this 90% design phase, I kind of did a double check or took a look at it another way and asked the design team to again estimate hours, but I now wanted them to estimate hours to get to 90% design. So we had all these changes along the way. Some of them were done efficiently, some maybe not as efficiently as we were hoping, but the amount to get to 90% design is that $278,786 versus what we thought it would be, $271,000 is what the total is on that additional services log. So it ended up being pretty close. I will say that one of the things that was added since has been we'd like to take these 90% documents to at least 3 different contractors to have them do a constructability and cost review for us. Pricing, as you know, has been volatile, so we can do our best job of estimating costs, but in order to get pricing from 3 contractors, that's really going to help us target a total project cost that will then help us figure out what we might need for funding to make this project affordable for the city. So that's where we're at. $278,786 is what we're asking for an amendment to the professional services agreement. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments from the council?
So calling that numbers in lieu, that's in lieu of the 271,000 or in addition, not in addition to?
No, not in
In
addition.
lieu of, yeah, okay.
In lieu of,
All right.
correct.
Well, I'm an engineer, I can't understand.
Sorry. Yeah, and I should note that because we want to take a pause on this project at 90%, we're saying that this contract is now going to end at 90%, which means we're not going to submit the documents to the state and we're not going to bid the project yet. So those items have been removed from the scope.
So initially we had the 271,000 budgeted in last year for this fiscal year?
Oh, we have way more.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have like, this is like $1,000,000 plus budgeted in for this year.
Gotcha.
Yeah, this is just a small section of the total.
Yeah.
Sorry, the original contract amount was $1,263,484.
It's just really hard to budget right now, with all the like you mentioned, the volatility,
Yeah.
unless you figure out a way to make this with wood, for our last
I wouldn't
discussion.
recommend it.
No,
Don't make it out of wood.
And again, some of this again is exactly as Colin described it. It was an anticipation of a process and a design in the facility study that was done that we relied on to put out the design RFP in the first place. And then as Tim and Mike and the team got working together, and then Brandon coming along, not that Brandon had a huge amount in changing this, but you can see some of the big ticket items like moving from an anaerobic to an aerobic digestion system. We bid it out and got the RFP in one style, moved to the other. A full conversion of the raw pump building to now it's a wet well and all this other stuff that's completely different from anything that was ever planned when they first got into it. I think there's a 55,000 sludge thickening wasn't even a thing as a discussion of how we do it, where we do it, or anything in the original RFP design. And then sludge drying beds and conversion and all that, which again, another one that just wasn't there. Instead of the existing trickling filter tank being utilized. That was a conversion of, we determined that a facility was not usable.
So the age on the original RFP, that's 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
No, the study was done relatively,
Which, I think published early 2019, but, there was an update, so we've had several updates.
yeah,
We had one that we did in, largely in 2018, it was published in 2019, and it didn't include any of the solids handling. We're going to a new style of treatment, and it's producing a lot more sludge solids. And then, so that sludge solids, which we send out to farm fields now as a liquid, has to be solidified to reduce the number of trucks. And so that whole thing had to be added. And so that was added in the 2021 version, and then it was later modified by adding thickening by SCH after we hired them. The first two versions by the previous engineering firm also.
There's some math that kind of happened behind the scenes as part of that facility plan, like Mike was talking about. So we took a look at, hey, what are the trucking costs to truck liquid sludge versus what would it be to thicken and then dewater the sludge? You know, how do the trucking costs, reduce because of that? Weighed against the equipment cost and the storage cost, of course, but that's an example of some of the things that have changed as part of the design.
So maybe the next thing is we'll have to buy a new truck.
It is true, yes.
I'm just bringing it up now because that'll be the next thing, we had the $500,000 truck, if not more.
We have so we have an end loader, we have a dump truck that we need, and then we need something to carry to the fields.
Right.
So
So just off the top of your head, how much does that truck, a new truck cost now?
250, 300,000.
That's it?
Am I correct that the city contract hauls right now?
Right now.
So we do
Yeah.
contract haul, it's possible that we would continue to contract haul, instead of in a tanker, it'd be some type of open, box that would, we could scoop up solids and dump it in. But they'd still have to be spread in the field. There's been many different methods. Who actually owns that piece of equipment, we haven't finalized yet, so. And again, it's just a matter of, do you contract that out, that person is responsible? Or do you, how much of it is the city's responsibility, city's equipment, so.
but by going through this process of reducing how liquefied it is, you're reducing the number of truckloads. So on the back end, even though maybe a little more cost up front, on the back end, there'll be fewer trips and it'll be hopefully more efficient when you transport it away from the facility. Is that fair?
It is fair, and so we're going from 2% solids by weight, the rest of it water, to roughly 20%, maybe it'll be 18%. So conceivably, 1/10 the number of trucks. We are, with this new process, tripling the amount of solids we're producing, so we won't see a 10% amount of trucks going out of the gate, you know, we'll see, a Thursday, right, something like that, so.
Now, is there a demand for it? That'll be the next thing, because the anhydrous and everything, the nitrates that are in it, so is there a demand?
Yes, there is a demand for it.
So, maybe there's an opportunity.
There's not a whole lot of the nitrogen that you're referencing, but there's a lot of the smaller, elemental nutrients in it, phosphorus, calciums, and that kind of thing.
So there could be an opportunity.
It certainly is beneficial, public perception is tough to get over sometimes.
Yeah, cause like I said, there's been a lot of change in the farming industry because of the anhydrous price. So there has been a lot more liquid put on, so maybe there's an opportunity.
We have switched from our anaerobic digested sludge, has a lot of smell, right? It produces, methane, so the odor causing, just like a marsh when you walk through it, the rotten egg smell. And we're going to a new aerobic process, so even though that's a little less efficient, it's probably more benign. Our neighbors of the farms that currently spread do have complaints, odor complaints with that sewage sludge.
Part of the ag community.
So we probably will open up with this new aerobic process of treating sludge to a greater demand for more applicators, right?
Yeah, I just think it's an avenue to try to maybe recoup some of the costs, take that opportunity.
Unfortunately, the cost for what we do
I know.
is so high. We do look for ways, to John's point, to try and mitigate some of those costs, but if you could make money doing it, someone else would be doing it.
And I will say that many communities across the United States are forced to landfill the product. And if you've heard a buzzword of PFAS, then it becomes hazardous waste if you have that type of contamination. We generally do not in Nebraska, but we have much lower costs in the fact that we are able to get land application of agricultural fields.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't go down, because that'd be a huge burden against us.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Yes.
I guess just to reaffirm for newest council members and stuff is, you know, the city's in good faith working towards new design and a new treatment plant. So that when we're having discussions with NDEE and they wanna know, you know, what we're doing for the future and stuff, this is an important step. This engineering study and having the design, even though we haven't figured out how to pay for it yet, it's a really important step.
One thing at a time.
So, I mean, but it's in the timeline, right?
Yes.
I'm just making a
yeah.
comment for
No.
new people is, you know, when the state regulators come and they're knocking on our door and they say, hey, you guys aren't doing it right, it's like, you know, we got it in the works, so.
Yeah.
Close to capacity, right?
Yeah, and to Matt's point is, you know, this process takes a long time, and the sooner you get started on it, the better it looks down the road if you do run into a situation where you're hitting capacity and you have to get maybe some waivers from the state for in short term. If you can show that you've done this work and that you're taking this a good faith effort, you're taking it seriously, I think that goes a long ways with them being willing to work with you. If we get close to or hit capacity to where we could be in violation, and we have no plan and no interest in trying to address that, then they can be more heavy-handed. But I think, you know, we have good relationships with the state, and we've done other projects where they've worked with us, and they are pretty understanding as long as you're operating in good faith. If they feel like you're not taking it seriously, then they can get a little more aggressive. Has that been your experience?
Correct.
Okay. So, yeah. And we are looking for as many revenue sources as possible. We haven't done a fundraiser yet for.
Can we make it into vanilla Coke?
Collection plate.
But we're gonna pass the hat around here in a little bit, so good. So, yep. Yeah.
I had a question about the transition period, where we shift from liquid tanker trucks to solid, some kind of tank truck, open truck for the solids. And then the distribution would be topical, just, like right now it's injected under the soil, correct?
think it's injected.
No,
right?
it's a
It's
spray.
just splashed out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking it had to be pretty fast, cause those truck turnarounds are pretty quick.
Typically what's happened is it's hauled out to the field site and then it's spread with manure.
Got it, okay.
And then incorporated shortly.
Yep.
It'll be slightly wetter than manure, but very, very similar.
Rich, you've seen, like this year, you've seen a lot of piles on the fields, and that's turkey. So, and they're spread, but you'll see that,
Okay,
a lot more of that. Chicken and
Alright.
turkey.
alright, thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions or comments from the council?
Everything we're seeing on the, say the spreadsheet or what have you, was already incorporated into the presentation, right?
Into this number, yeah, into this 278,000. Yep.
The reality is, you know, we kind of have to do this. But we appreciate this opportunity just so that everyone is educated as far as knowing like where we're at in the process and what changes are being made, and he's able to answer the questions and why. So this is really more of an informative opportunity so that you're briefed, because it's a pretty substantial project. It's kind of I think the largest capital project we've ever done. And so we just want to make sure that everyone has opportunity to ask your questions and be comfortable with these decisions. But like, yeah, if this was voted down, then, yeah, right? Okay.
He's just laughing at
He's
you.
laughing at me, guys. He's just laughing.
It was nervous.
He just gets his whiteout out and just starts whiting out stuff on the plans.
So with that, is there a motion or?
I'm sorry,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say, what would essentially happen is that we would, stop where we're at, because we are this close from being to our contract, not to exceed them all, so.
Gotcha. Matt,
I move approval.
we have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Taylor, Tanya, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alright, item 6. Consideration of a professional services agreement with HDR Engineering Incorporated for the final design of the interior drainage and pump station improvements project in the amount not to exceed $419,780. Mike, welcome back.
Thank you very much. So you have with you several documents, quite a few pages. At first, there's a 3-page short form with the engineering firm HDR. It's then followed by 20-page scope of services. There's some terms and conditions with that, and then there's a schedule at the very end. And then we do have also, it's very informative, this table here, which lays out all of the hours and the cost per task. And so you can see there's quite a few tasks in terms of executing this project. So this is basically for our levee pump station. It's currently at the inland side. So what this station does is when it rains heavily, the levee protects the city from floodwaters rising from the Big Blue. However, stormwater continues to collect on the streets and storm sewer system inside the levee, and then it collects at the south end of the levee on the inside, and has to be pumped over the levee, through the levee, into the river portion of that. We have an aging levee pump station right now. It's essentially all manual. This project is also tied, Greg would know more about this, to levee certification as well. Updates are necessary. We put in a whole new series of pumps, new capacities. The process will be all automated. The street superintendent will be able to operate this remotely, through a laptop or an iPad or something like that. Right now, he physically has to show up, turn on pumps, to adjust gates up and down, things like that. So this is a rather substantial contract for design. It's probably typical of this type of effort for a rather small building. So if anybody sees it, it's at the end of 10th Street, am I right, on the south end, right before the levee? Or a rather nondescript building right now. So we did go through, previous, months, we presented, a selection process, we awarded HDR, we had 2 bids, come in, and then so with that selection process allows us to negotiate scope and fee, which is what we're presenting today, the amount of $419,780. And so with approval of this, then we'll sign that short form agreement. That team will start, the work goes through July of 2024. There's a first phase where we kind of gauge, we do some preliminary design, we gauge the cost-benefit ratio. If that ratio is greater than 1, there's more benefit than there is cost, then we get funding for that project, and then we can move forward with the bulk of the design process, come up with a finished set of plans and specifications, and move forward with construction at that later date.
Thanks, Mike. We have any questions or comments from the council?
So my comment is also when the river's at flood stage and then the normal storm sluice gates have to be closed, and then it starts raining again, that's the only way to get rainwater over the levee. That pools in that part of the town,
Yeah, correct, correct, that is indeed correct.
so that gets really exciting.
We do have a couple other
A
places
few times.
where we install we haul temporary pumps in and we
Yeah.
pump. So, but this is the main one.
Yep.
So, carries the bulk of the storm sewer.
So I have a big conflict of interest in this, right? I think we
Perhaps.
started talking about it in 2017, Greg?
Oh, yeah.
That was that meeting, the levy accreditation meeting was 2017?
Yes, this is taking forever.
Yeah.
It's a long process, and again, I think, it's been kind of gummed up by grants and everything that just moves slowly. And it just moves slower because you're dealing with permitting with the Corps of Engineers, environmental, you name it. Or BNSF, I mean, we hit about everything that slows anything down in this project. But again, it's also something that's critical for our infrastructure, and we need to have this pump station be functional, and it suffers from, the most essential element is that if somebody doesn't wake up in the middle of the night, and the exact second this thing needs to be kicked on, we can have a major issue.
And, you go for years without even turning it on, you know?
Yep. So, we do have a meeting with the grant, administrators, at NEMA to have a discussion. I fired off, an email today actually to them to just shore up. One of our biggest concerns on this one is that if part of the design process to complete what's called, cost-benefit analysis. And unfortunately for the grant, the back half of the grant, the second phase of the grant is determined upon that cost-benefit analysis. And it's determined that the danger to property is less in that cost-benefit analysis and other things. I mean, you really go all encompassing, like the fact that right now we have to throw pumps over the top of BNSF and stop the railway. And we had to call them and say, literally, you have to stop your trains. The economic impact of that is all figured into this cost-benefit analysis. But if that cost-benefit analysis can't see a positive in regards to the ultimate design and the cost of it, then we do not qualify for the next phase of the grant. So that's one of the risks in taking this up. We need to design this, but there is the potential that if the cost-benefit analysis doesn't work, and they know that, they need to understand in their design, trying not to just build it to the hilt, that they're building it to try and kind of balance that need versus the economic cost. So.
One of the reasons we selected HDR is in particular, they had a cost-benefit expert that they had on the team. He has already looked, in terms of proposing for this project, he already looked into roughly the parameters and felt fairly confident that the cost-benefit, the BC ratio, the benefit exceeds the cost, and when you divide cost into benefits, that ratio is greater than 1, which is what gets us approval. So he will follow the whole project through, and multiple steps will ensure that we're above that ratio.
And if we get below, we want to stop, because unfortunately
we may still need the design and the pump station, but
Yep.
we need to we probably have to do it without funding. So, or or find a different source.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
I move for approval.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your vote. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkie, Taylor, Tiny, Singleton, Streisand, 6-0.
Alright, thank you, Mike. Item 7, update on the wellness center.
Wow, Wellness Center. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. We sent off information to our equipment vendors. And so Shane and I just got back today. All the basketball hoops, volleyball nets, everything that's basically coming down from the ceiling in the gym cost. So that's a pretty penny. But we'll go through that and have them break it out and itemize it more. We've come down to the last, I think we've really settled in on a lot of the elements. We met with the pool team from JEO this week and kind of set the final design of the pool. Right now it does have, we call it the lazy river, but we're all going to have to get used to calling it a channel. It's not a lazy river, it's called a channel. But we have that in there and incorporated some stair access and things like that that will make it pretty accommodating. Again, everything on one floor still. That was one of the biggest things in reducing costs. We've actually, it's amazing to watch it. I mean, you go from the before and after school care room being like 2,000 square feet down to 700 square feet, and then magically it makes it back because of our reorganization of other areas to try and bring stuff back. And so kind of everything that was in there that was originally before is now back in the building and in the right placement, categorized together. The locker rooms are fair. I mean, it is a lot of work by a select few that are really, especially, I can't say enough about what Shane's doing and the work that me and Shane have to do back and forth and fight with each other. And now Joel, as he kind of comes on and sits in with us. So that's where we're at for now. So we'll have some good equipment numbers and estimates on that, just so it matches where Samson's kind of been with their estimates. I think we'll see 3D renderings of basically what the building will look like on Monday, based on this new, because the last 3D renderings we saw were in two-story shape, so it doesn't look anything like that now. But they're trying to do some neat things with corridors, and they did some neat stuff with what we call it the wet room. It's essentially like a viewing room that has a lot of multi-purpose, so it can be used for like a overflow for events in the pool. So if your staging area for competitors and families to watch, because it has a lot of glass around it. But then it opens up and it can be expanded lobby space. It can be used for, it'll have drains in the floor, so it can be used for lifeguard training and Red Cross work. We'll probably use it as the board kind of room in there as well. It'll have TVs on the wall for training purposes and stuff. It'll be kind of at the forefront now, but it opens up. Not extravagantly, it's just the nature of how we designed it. And so we think some of those things that they're doing are really cool. Joel's there, so he can't complain about his office. Ultimately, all that stuff in the office space has been set in. So other than that, the fundraising arm